divine horses, yes, the forces of the sun, with gentle touch, it means so much to bring our faith into this reality. We set each other free.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Eagles Nest podcast. First one of 2023, actually. I've been off, I think, since maybe November. Yeah, I did some conferences in November, did Star Knowledge Conference up in North Dakota. That was amazing, honoring Chief Golden Light Eagle. Thank you to Nikki for putting that all together, his daughter. Looking forward to joining you for the next one. And and then I went down to Florida for Zen Awakening, spoke there, was a keynote speaker on the last day to close out the festival. Shared some cool stuff with energy and everything. And let's see what else been going on. Got another baby on the way. Got a daughter, Ember. She's due in June. Hawk's doing good. And just been focusing on family and the church and just getting back into the podcast. Got a few guests coming up. Tonight I got Randy Veitenheimer. You may have seen him on Gaia. I think he was a host. I think he's here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Quantum Effect. Look it up. And he's just an amazing person altogether. I got his website. Let's see here if I can pull that up. Got his website right here. And we're going to bring him on in just a moment. But in 2 days, Thursday, we got Ruben Langdon coming up. He's also the host of a show over at Gaia called Extra Dimensionals. He's also one of the stunt doubles for the first Avatar movie. He was also in the Last of Us game. He was the voice on the Last of Us game. Last of Us is a big show on HBO right now. I'm really enjoying it. If you're watching The Last of Us on HBO, leave a comment. In the chat box. And let's start that conversation for sure. But that's it. That's an awesome show. But anyways, Ruben Langdon's got to be here in 2 days. He was scheduled. He was one of my first couple of guests scheduled. Had to reschedule. He's done a lot of traveling, and finally we're gonna got him booked back on lockdown. And I confirmed with him today, even, and he's going to be here on Thursday. It's going to be an amazing conversation as well. And we're going to get really into his show, Extra Dimensionals, over at Gaia, where he interviews people that channel, talk to higher dimensional beings. And it's going to just be that's another medicine brother, too. He's done ayahuasca and ceremonies. So, the conversation probably tilt that way a little bit, but always. But tonight we have Randy. And Randy is an energy healer, modern day medicine man, and artist. As a member of the Potawatomi tribe from Tecumseh, Oklahoma, he learned at a very young age the power of plants and vibration in the healing process. At around the age of 19, he began his in-depth studies of martial arts, which led to other forms of energy transfer and healing practices from world-renowned masters and teachers. Randy developed a healing method he calls creative energetic health. So without further ado, I'm going to bring my friend Randy on to the Eagles Nest podcast. Welcome to Eagles Nest podcast, brother. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. It's great to see you. Been watching your episodes and getting an idea of what we're up to today.
It's just wide open like always.
Yeah.
So how's life? How's everything going?
Oh, it's going great. I know in the pre-show we were talking about, what's going on in the world, and I call this a popcorn year. It's one of those where you step out of the movie and sit down, grab you some popcorn, and watch the show, because it is definitely entertaining at this point. So
Yeah, it's people. It's funny. People, watch action movies, things like that. But when things are actually happening, in the real world, like there's very few people that really want to engage in that like that. But then there is some people that there's another half of the humanity of the collective that really, like the person that waits for the car crash and looks out the window. There's a lot
yeah,
of those people, and
right.
it's definitely getting it's definitely making the news. I think the last time I saw the death toll was up to 6,000 or something like that, or over in Turkey. And
Yes.
that's just the loss of life over there. I pray for everyone that's going through and their families, that they can go through that transition, and um look past the tragedy, and just focus on the heart. That's what I think these tragedies, and even our deaths and our personal families and stuff like that, I think this really forced us to focus on our heart a lot. So this is kind of like if we're looking at the big human family, this is a moment that we can all look at our hearts and see what's important. And but I do I do agree with the popcorn ear thing too. Like, definitely don't want to engage and say volunteer to take part in any of these scenarios playing out, for sure. I get that. So tell me about childhood. We got into a little bit pre-show. I didn't want to get any more into it. You don't have to, but whatever you're comfortable with. But what led you to start? What led you up to 19? Like, fill us in.
I- It's survival.
Survival,
So
life.
uh, people people have different experiences of getting to 19. We'll say. It to me, it's like, how many scars did you end up with before you got to 19?
Mhm.
And of course, not all of them are physical. So everybody up until from birth till then encounters physical scarring, mental scarring, emotional, spiritual, psychic, psychological. Humans have an amazing aptitude for innovation and how we treat each other. so anyway, survival means that I grew up fighting.
Yeah,
That's basically it. And then survival became something that was more of an antiquated way of life. I laugh at all the preppers and people that are trying to return to the land and this, that, and the other. I grew up that way, and it shocks my daughter that I had coal oil lamps and a wood stove in the center of the house, and you would draw water from a well and all these things. And so to be able to move to town from the farms or whatever around 12 or 13 was like this big awakening, right? So that kind of life is uh, it's simple, but it requires constant attention. And that is one of the things that has definitely disappeared off the landscape, is people's ability to pay attention, my opinion. so
yeah,
growing up that way gave me a lot of skills. People think about, again, like getting away from everything or being out in the woods or out on the land, and uh, I've lived on riverbanks for months at a time, or lakes, and it's not something that I think about, because that was an educational experience, and it's not an education you get through contemporary education. There's another training or another school out there, and when I was growing up, that was normal to engage in nature or the outdoors, we'll call it. But now it's not so much. It has a fascination, But people don't realize that basically once you step off the asphalt, it's like everything out there will eat you, bite you, sting you, hurt you. and that kind of knowledge you gain as a child doesn't go away. But if you're trying to learn it when you're in your 40s, 50s, or 60s, well, you may have a steep learning curve. So
Yeah, I totally understand that.
childhood. So
Yeah, I was contemplating today, well, a lot. I contemplated, especially over the past 3 years. We bought this house 3 years ago. It didn't have a well, and we just got a well today. Actually, they were digging it, and they got done like an hour and a half ago. Thank God. So they were like right out my window, and but so I'm so grateful for having that well. And looking back over the past 3 years, me and my wife were figuring it up, and I estimated I hauled over 40,000 gallons of water to this house over the past 3 years.
right.
You know, and that was all mostly done by me. I got a wife and a teenage stepdaughter. They move the bottles and the water inside, but like yeah, it was a lot. And looking back on that relationship with water, like it was a long 3 years, but now like since the well's here, like I get to look at that 3 years as like a blessing of having like a deep relationship with water for 3 years. Like I really look at water differently than most people. I'm pretty sure. Like I have to. Like you know
Yeah, you
after all,
develop an
after all that.
appreciation, right?
So I think we're on the same wavelength.
Yeah,
So for sure, I think we're on the same wavelength. What we're talking about here. Yeah. So so isn't that the lesson for everybody though? Just childhood, life, and whatever lessons and experiences, traumas you have, that's kind of what molds you were up until you're 18, 19.
yes. The thing about if you grow up in a single environment, so say you grow up and live in the same town or same house, same relationships, um, you become comfortable, we'll call it. And I was moving every couple of years. Came out of Oklahoma to California for a few years, and then back to Oklahoma, and New Mexico, and Oklahoma, and Arizona, and just you keep going around, and 3 or 4 schools in a year, and you either develop social skills or you disappear and
Yeah.
become an expert. And what I learned was to be able to operate in basically any environment, and so uh, I'm comfortable in the high desert, or the mountains, or jungles of Louisiana. That's a long story. So, but what that does is create growth,
Yeah.
and so that becomes an order of manifestation of just how much growth can you stand. Like you said, you went to eagle dances and maybe ghost dances too, things like that. And, there's a lot of growth that occurs, and not necessarily in area of academia. I mean, life is not academic, despite what some people would have you believe. So,
I like that. I like that. Yeah. You know, life experiences, like I can't remember much I learned in school, like to be honest, like other than like I know like math and things like that, but those things came naturally anyways. It seems like, do you subscribe to the idea like that we're remembering things like instead of learning them? Like um like if you're getting down and dump we're just start jumping off the deep end if you're fine with that. But
yeah,
our cells, we know that water carries vibration, and actually we're starting to find out that carries memory. So it comes to the thought comes that we have memories and that are flowing through us, not only from the spiritual side or the energetic side, but also from the physical side. So What's your thoughts on that? Are we remembering or are we learning things as we go?
The format of memory. Uh, well, let's jump into that. It's electromagnetic, okay, and it's not in the brain. So here we
Mhm.
go. You have physical memory. The body remembers, and we call it muscle memory. And then the brain has synaptic pathways that you develop, and those neural pathways can become like superhighways if you're, say, addicted. If you're addicted to cigarettes or drinks or anything else, and that highway gets so wide that it basically eliminates your interactions with the other ones that are going on, and may interfere with what we call base level programming. So then you go into the memory field itself is your auric field or energy field. That's where I work a lot. And then you get beyond that, you get into general consciousness or the collective conscious of humanity. And just a short deviation, there's a collective consciousness of trees, water, the earth. Basically, anything that exists has memory, and everything that exists is alive. And so you keep working your way out, and you find out that memory is kind of like all over the place. Now, the methods by which you store memory and the methods with which you recover it or access it are all uh, different levels of expertise, we'll call it. When I was young, after getting hit in the head a few times, I had an eidetic memory for many years. And, I could read a book and quote you a page or, paragraph, sentence, whatever. I've lost some of that. So, but anyway, if you go back to the memory thing, is we're interactive with memory to some degree. Sometimes more than others, depending on time of day or night or physical condition. But nobody's ever really explained how we access the field. And the field of information, field of memory, we have our own we access. We access other people when we're around them. We can access their memories. It's all available because you carry all of it with you.
Mhm.
You're like a little data bank, and you carry all that information. And then when you go out in the woods, to answer your question, some of that information is available. It's information available from the field. And so when we say we learned something, well, did we learn something or did we come to accept the knowledge that was flowing into us or the knowledge that was flowing around us? And I'll give you an example. I was given a lecture years ago, and I was talking about the fact that a lot of Native American um, information, knowledge, skills were being lost. And I had a man show up. He was from South Dakota. He was Rosebud Sioux, I believe. And he marched into where I was lecturing and said, "I need to talk to you." And I said, "What's up?" And he said, "The knowledge is not lost. We're just not accessing it as much as we used to. So that anybody who wants that information, like you and others, can access it because it's available." And so everybody would say, "Oh, lost knowledge and this, that, and the other." If you have the skills, you can explore that information field and not only explore it, but you can become adept. You can become talented at interacting with it. So we don't normally interact with our own memory. It's something that people bring up or drag up, but um, the information field itself is something that should be explored. It's the willingness to ask the universe, "What's up?"
Yeah. Careful what you ask for.
Yeah, exactly.
Careful what you ask for. And yeah, just be open to the rabbit hole being way deeper than you could ever imagine. That's the best way. That's the
Yeah.
best way I could describe it. Yeah. So, man, you headed up a show. Oh, I back up a bit. Your martial arts training. What are we talking about? Qigong? Or are we talking about some other
Kung Fu.
some kung fu?
Yeah.
And
Shao.
how
What?
and how was you were accessing energy fields with through that or
Yes. Shaolin Kung Fu is. Uh, I even heard another interviewer refer to it recently. Shaolin Kung Fu is a system of interaction with the universe, and it starts with the physical. So you learn to fight. Well, you're actually learning to move. You're learning physical integration, and then if you practice that, you can become a good fighter. It takes about 6 years. And then you go into mind body, and that's where it gets interesting. And once you start engaging the mind involved in it, it becomes internal martial arts. So you have the external, which is all the fancy moves and weapons and everything else. But then when you move to internal martial arts, it's the ability to move energy, to affect energy, to increase energy, and to direct energy engagement. And this is all well documented through thousands of years of qigong, gigong, nigong. There's a bunch of gongs out there. I tell people,
yeah.
and tai chi and kung fu and everything. But after 6 years is when it becomes kind of like you're finally at a point where maybe you can understand it.
Yeah.
And so I was lucky to find a Shaolin master that came to my town when I was 18, and Supreme Grandmaster George Ng. He
Wow.
was he was
It's a hell
recently
of a title.
he was recently named the Supreme Kung Fu Master in China, and
Wow.
and I was lucky or unlucky enough to start studying with him. Remember pain? That's the common thread throughout the first 19 years.
Oh.
But when I first went, he said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Well, I want to learn to fight." And it took me many years and decades later to learn. I should have said I want to learn to not fight, but he said, "I'll teach you to learn to fight if you learn how to heal." And I had no clue what he was talking about, so I said, "Sure," right? And the thing about learning the internal arts is a 40-year program, so now you're up to 46 years. So I completed that program, by the way. And
Wow.
if you look in Shaolin Kung Fu, they were basically doctors. They had the ability to energetically affect a person's health, and from both directions, we'll say. If you were in a fight, you might want to disturb the force around a person. And if you encountered a person that had a disturbed force, you would try to alter that. And so all healing is just a simple shift in your energy field and or the amount of energy that is available for whatever processes are going on in the body. And of course, now that's very prevalent. And in the 60s, that was unheard of. Even up until the 2000s, I would tell people what I did, and they just like doctors. I love doctors because they could not figure out what I was doing. They denied it, even though it was right in front of them. If they had a client that I worked on or worked with, they just couldn't understand how the person could be different outside of their own modality, outside of their own belief system, outside their own experience. And what did Walt Disney say? It's a wide, wide world, or something like that. So might want to go looking around a little bit. So
Yeah. That's interesting. I do, I work with plants, work with ceremonies, sacred ceremonies and stuff. And but I also work with energy too, and just it's kind of been a byproduct of my journey. And before my ceremonies, I've been doing this for about couple of years now are take a lighter out and or take a pendulum and or pass it around to people and or have them hold it over the lighter, and we're talk about with the whole group will talk about the lighter either being a piece of plastic made by Bic, has a piece of metal in it, this and that, or it lights a sage, it lights tobacco, it's representation of the central fire, and have them watch, our words like transmute that lighter and watch the pendulum move, in their own hands, and then we'll do the ceremony, and that it's almost like cracking the egg before I cook it. It's just like they go into the ceremony with their reality just blown apart before they even take the medicine, and then the medicine just takes them all the way, man. Like every time, it's amazing. So
Yeah.
yeah. So the evolutionary shift of humanity, is that something? Are we in? Or is the clock about to strike midnight? Like
Oh.
or is it or or is it a is it more of a singular sport? But we have the illusion that it's a collective game that we're all playing. Is this something that it's an individual sport? Like we get to move forward when this evolutionary shift, like we have to we have to agree upon it. We have to meet certain heart vibrations to even receive some of these messages and abilities or remember them again. We have to come into some type of coherence internally before we can do that. So is the evolutionary shift of humanity, is this an event that we're going to see, a paradigm shift where we have a flotilla of ships come and down and make themselves known? Or is it more of a individual internal thing?
Okay. Let me see if I can break this apart. Uh, if it's evolutionary advancement, then I think it would be better looked at more as a sport. So,
Take it lightly.
I say that because you have fans, you have followers, you have people that support that particular way of doing things or looking at things, and then you're off into an area of like Rupert Sheldrake wrote about morphic fields, and if you extend morphic fields on out, you could basically say, well, humanity is a morphic field, a field of knowledge, a field of parameters, identification. And so if you take that, we could say, well, there's a certain strength or weakness of that field. And one of the ways you can look at it is if the population is increasing, then the field is strong. The force is strong with these people. So humanity's been increasing in population. So that would indicate some sort of strength in our field of existence. Okay, it doesn't address quality, and and that's the other thing is like to be alive is a facet of the field. The quality of life is a whole different subject, and so back to that morphic field thing. If you think about, say, the population of snow leopards, we could say, well, 200 years ago there was a large population, and now there's not so many. And here we go with extinction and hunting and all these other factors. But to me, you had to lose field strength before you could be eliminated. And in other words, before that population can die out, there was a field event where it lost either energy flow or it lost integrity. Okay, so that the possibility of that species disappearing becomes more and more evident by lesser and lesser numbers. We're not there yet, so. If you saw a great decline in the population of humanity, then now you could get into well, this is not evolution. This might be devolution, right? We might be going the other way. And that's as a species. It has nothing to do with individuals at a certain level. So one more answer in your question there was that individually we can have an effect on the field, but the degree and extent becomes something that we could argue about or talk about. So did that
So
answer?
kind of both.
Yeah,
Your answer is kind of both.
yeah.
I
So,
like it.
yeah, both and.
Yeah. Yeah, it's man, it's definitely something going on. So what do you think, like, obviously, like, our living reality, like the world we live in, like we may lose, like, we may lose supermarkets, things like that. It might, but I don't think, like, I think we're gonna get, the train's gonna look different in my lifetime. And to what extent, that's a big question. Everybody, it could be totally different. It could be all underwater. It could be everything burnt down. It could be, okay, we're not going to have Walmarts anymore, and
Right.
whatever on that scale, is gonna change. But I definitely think that my children are gonna grow up in a much different social, spiritual, and physical environment to some degrees on all those levels, you know.
Yes.
And I think that's what my guides told me. I don't really have guides anymore, but when I did have guides, like, the guidance that was given to me, is like, you're going through something that you and humanity are going through something that has never really actually occurred, within, like, a human span. Like, there's going to be, it was explained to me that I'm going to get to see, like, a totally different world change, from what I grew up in. It's going to be a lot different, especially, like, the social and the spiritual or energetic understandings of the mass collective is going to be much different by the time I pass. And that was very exciting to me, and now I see we're on that path and we're on that journey, and it's really uplifting to really believe that.
Yeah. The path is one of change, and we look at and backwards. We eliminate so much information when we look backwards and say, "Well, that was a good time,"
Mm.
and without any context. And the other thing is that in our past, things were more isolated into groups. So you were of a certain religion, a certain race, a certain culture, a certain country, all these things. And what you see now is a fragmentation of all that identification outside of yourself. And so what is left is to re-identify, and I dislike the word intensely authentic self, but 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 the idea is that to re-identify as a self, and understand again that the idea is we survive in the changing circumstances. Now, do you need to change? Well, more than change would be acceptance of reality as it is currently, which is constantly changing. And I told my daughter the same thing. I said, you will never know the freedoms I had. The ability to go anywhere and basically do anything without cameras recording all of it. So there's a certain freedom of expression back then. And so is this permanent? I doubt it. I think that things will keep evolving. There's if not the right word, then they'll certainly keep changing. So adaptability is one of the functions of evolution. And those that adapt are much better than those that adopt. What we see right now on social media stuff is very much adoption. I take in wholeheartedly everything somebody says, adopt it as my own, and spit it back out. If you look at the current state of reality around you, we would say we adapt to those changes as best we can while maintaining the integrity of the self. That's the idea. So,
Man, that's one of the most powerful sentences I've heard in a very long time. That's sums it all up. Like,
yeah.
yeah, it's okay to bend, but you still, you're still the tree. The tree can bend, but it's still the tree, and it remains a tree. Yeah, I like that. So, quantum effect, like how that show, like, what was your craziest conversation on quantum effect?
uh, Probably getting into it.
Yeah.
I got a call and they said, well, they wanted to talk to me. Apparently, somebody had been talking to them about me, and so I go up there, and when I go into Gaia, they say, okay, you're going to meet with Yurka, who's the owner at the time, and you got 15 minutes, and he never meets with anybody more than 15 minutes. So I thought, well, that'll be exciting. So I go in and sit down in conference room. He comes in, sits down, and 6.5 hours later, I got to exit that room because basically I said, I'm tired. I quit. I'm out the door. And when I came out, the people in the office were like kind of wide-eyed. They're like, what's going on? And I go, I don't know what you're talking about. We had a conversation. And they said, nobody ever, right? And I said, well, I had to call it quits. He shared his sandwich with me, but I was getting pretty hungry. Get cranky when I'm hungry, just so you know. And they were just astounded. He shared a meal with you. So I didn't know all this stuff, but the important part of the conversation occurred. He goes, what do you want to do? And I go, well, I want to talk about some things. And he goes, no, you have to tell me what you want to do. And I said, very simply, I want to be able to explain some things so people have a better understanding than just throwing out things like quantum physics and consciousness and all these other things that are very popular right now. Because I feel like people say the words or engage it without maybe the depth of understanding or knowledge they need to approach it or engage in it. And not as a judgment on people, but I just felt like if I could arm them up with some more knowledge, that they would be better off in their ability to interact with this whole thing that came along called consciousness. And so even though the hippies and I was one of those. Haight-Ashbury in '68, Sunset Strip, all that stuff. That was something that was discussed, and it was something that was a continuing conversation over the last 40, 50 years. And of course, now it became instantly popular, even though it had been around 40 or 50 years. So back to Gaia, they said that they would do a series with me, and what was the series going to be about? And that's where I submitted 13 topics, and it became quantum effect. And it's an appropriate term because quantum physics, despite anything you might know or study or find out about it, has definitely given us a language. And that language, as it applies in quantum physics to all forces and things that are going on in the universe, also applies to language. And so if we take and borrow some of that language and apply it to the ideas of psychiatry, psychology, medicine, we get a much better understanding and basis for engaging in reality. Now, that's my opinion. But I formed a corporation, a foundation in the late '90s, Foundation for Quantum Research in Medicine and Health. And I would go to these conferences and people would laugh at me because they couldn't even begin to comprehend what that title meant. And of course now it's like, oh yeah, everybody knows what that's about, right? So
Yeah.
so if you look at
But do they?
yeah, if you look at quantum physics today and look at just the language that's developed of everything from Planck's scale on matter, which has given us a greater understanding of biology. Forget planetary exploration. We have a big planet called ourselves that needs to be explored with great
Yeah.
and great depth.
There's
And
so much. There's so much people are missing, man. Like
yeah,
I've done 3 whoopee ceremonies, like, and 2 of them were very intense. The last whippy ceremony I did, I think it was 2017 or 18. I was a drummer, singer in one, and I didn't talk to anybody for 3 days. I was in silence for 3 days after that, just because I was trying to wrap my head around everything that happened in there. Like there is so people are missing a lot, man. Like people are missing so much. There's so much to explore. Like not just with psychedelics. Like the Whippy ceremony is a non-psychedelic ceremony. It's just songs but what's out there are and people can explore. Like you know, telepathy is people are the mass. I feel the mass majority of everybody believes that telepathy is something that is possible in some form. There's a smaller part, but still a large part that fully believe in telepathy. And now we're starting to move into telekinesis, and those numbers are growing more and more every day. Like I've seen telekinesis, myself, and seen it was possible. And the question that I have after each one of those experiences that really shift my paradigm is what's next and how far can this go? And I think that's if people start really going to looking at the stars with a real intention of that, they can. I think you're right, man. I don't think you need to get on a ship at all. I think you need to close your eyes and learn how to breathe and go within yourself, like deep within yourself.
yeah,
And that's where the magic happens.
yeah. The I tell people the idea is to become an explorer. In this case, as soon as you close your eyes, uh, you are now an internal explorer, back to that internal martial arts, and to explore inward and backward, we would say, because all of our senses are on the front of the body, and so all our projections are forward. And to be able to turn that around 180 and go exploring the universe in that direction is a phenomenal exercise. I taught Kundalini Yoga for about 40 years. And one of the exercises to be able to turn your consciousness and look out the back of your head. And it's not the back of your head, it's to look in that direction.
Mm.
And the amount of information that's back there is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And people say things like, "Oh, something came to me," and my immediate question is, "From which direction?" Okay, it's something people don't ask. In Native America, we have 4 directions, 8 directions,
Yeah.
or way you want to go with it. But
Yeah. The numbers keep rising.
right, and but if you look at it like which direction, which ties back into when I was first learning some of this. One day I saw somebody and they were not present. So I tapped them on the shoulder and go, "Hey," and they kind of like jerk, right? And that's interesting. That's a kinesiological response of the consciousness re-entering the body. And and so it's like your friend said when he would come out of whatever state he was in, he would reintroduce himself, right?
Yeah.
I'm so and so, and I found this and that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that that jerk, that kinesiological jerk, is re-entering the body. We do it when we wake up suddenly or in the morning. And but one of my question to him was, "Where were you?" And he goes, "I was somewhere else." And I go, "I know that. I'm trying to determine where you were." And the reason I want to do that is over the years, I've been developing what's called a GPS of somewhere else, a GPS of the field, where you can access information specifically, kind of like you go GPS and look at something on a map or on Google. And if you look at it that way, now you're in the realm of what Tesla and Einstein and a whole bunch of other people do, which is keep a notebook by the bed and let the information come to you. So all questions you would ask of the universe, you'd ask internally. You don't need to ask them externally, right? External answers tend to be academic, and internal answers tend to be the truth. So
Yeah.
once you learn to distinguish that, then you can make your way forward through any context that's going on around you. And to me, the amount of inputs we have right now have made it more difficult to navigate your way forward for the average.
You know, funny story. So, you know, I'm a veteran, PTSD, all that, and I experienced several ayahuasca ceremonies, and then I went to some VA classes, and we were talking about and there was a brain surgeon come in there, and he starts talking about how the brain receptors are, and how they look and everything. And I raised my hand, and I was like, "Do you mind if I we had a chalkboard up there. I was like, "Do you mind if I grab a chalk for a minute, and I'm going to show you, and can you tell me if this is close to what it looks like?" And I was able to draw and sketch it all out, uh, brainstem activity and brain receptors and how they separate from PTSD and all that. And he's like, "How do you know all this?" And I was like, I I went into meditate. You know, I didn't go into. I told him afterwards about the ayahuasca. I didn't tell him from the group, but I was like, I went into meditation,
Right.
and I saw this inside my brain, and I saw that's what was being fixed. And yeah, it was he was he was very shook by it, you know. And but when I told him about the ayahuasca afterwards, he was like, "Oh yeah, it makes sense." He's like, "I've heard a lot about this."
It, PTSD is, I have some knowledge of that, or opinions, so we'll put it that way. If memory is charged up with emotion, it becomes resilient. Okay.
Mhm.
And if you take memory, it disappears by distance over time, kind of like one of those laws of physics. So what happens is, if I said somebody's name or someplace that you were, instantly you are re-engaged. Okay. Now,
Mhm.
you're not re-engaged with the memory, you're re-engaged with the energy behind the memory. So
Mhm.
if somebody could say somebody's name from third grade, and you're instantly like, "I don't like that person, blah, 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 blah." And it's like, wow, where did that energy come from? The answer is you were storing it. Okay. Remember those neural pathways? They can get to the point where they obliterate all other forms of information flow, right? Emotion flow. And so you become locked into a neural pathway, and at the end of that neural pathway is emotionally charged memory. And I heard there's some gurus out there, people that are putting on programs and stuff, and one of them said, "Well, you need to charge up what you're doing with your emotions." And I was like, "No, no, 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 no," because if you did that, then if you're not capable, or for circumstance allow you to reach your goal, then all that negative energy becomes available, or the energy turns negative. So here's what I do. I had a doctor in Oklahoma City call me, and she goes, "I've got a client, and I want you to come up here. I go in and somebody just back from one of the Iraq wars. PTSD, really bad, beating his wife, waking up in the middle of the night and screaming, the whole routine. And I said, give me a minute. And this is where the energy transfer, the kinesiology, is basically to drop that energy out. So you can have the experience, but you can't have the energy behind it. And so it becomes another event in your life. Now, you can't tell somebody to do that. You can't tell them get over it and calm down and all this other crap. But if you drop the energy out of it, I promise you, it's just like, yeah, Tuesday I was here, last year I was there. It holds no significance. And unless you can drop that energy out, I promise you 20 years from now, somebody mentions that name or that place or that event, and you immediately skyrocket into the emotional energy charge. And so this is what happens. And another example, I was lecturing, which I thought was funny, a group of psychiatrists and doctors. and I was talking about all this. And
so you're talking about the ones that's prescribed to the talk therapy as the way to go through your things. I that hit me real quick, like after the ceremony, after I started ceremonies and then went to the talk therapy. I was like, this is reminding me of these times. Like,
that's what I'm getting to, because the language I learned was talk therapy doesn't work, which I'm sure will excite a whole bunch of people out there. You get tired of talking about it. That's talk therapy. But you still haven't gotten rid of the emotional charge. And that's why we can bring up things 20, 30, 40 years later about somebody did something to somebody. Because I'm still retaining that, and I need to do something with it. And of course, the obvious thing to do is get rid of it. So here I'm lecturing these people, and one of the ladies brought up rape. And I went, whoa. So I said, how many times does somebody have to repeat the experience of being raped if they go through the system? And one of the ladies was a police psychologist, and she says, I can answer that. And she said, about 45 times. And I said, so let me get this straight. I have a really bad experience rape. And you want me to repeat that 45 times in my life and re-experience it, all with the outcome of developing a neural pathway that's wider than a superhighway? And she goes, yes. And I said, how does that help? And the only, it's like, it's an insanity. Now, here's the kicker. One of the ladies goes, well, there's a benefit. And I go, whoa, there's a benefit in re-experiencing trauma? And I said, would you please explain that to me? Because maybe everybody should have the benefit of that type of experience, right? Now, it quickly evolved into a free-for-all with these people. But
I bet, man, holy shit.
But the language is that you don't need it. I agree that you went through it. I agree it was damaging. In the same way that if you broke a bone, the body will heal in 6 months. If you have a mental injury, abuse, we're talking a couple of years. If it's emotional abuse, we may be talking lifetimes. And here we go with a whole spectrum of psychological, etheric, astral, causal, who knows what all goes on. But
yeah, that's when it starts changing out of textbook diagnosis into more generational trauma and things like that. Like generational trauma is very, very real. Like I've experienced it from both ways. Like I've unknowingly passed some on, and I've unknowingly received some. And even though I'm consciously going through life, like I unknowingly, like, pass some on. And I think we all do that. I think that's just part of the process.
So one of the things about traumatic events that become emotionally charged is the idea is that we would not engage with them anymore, right? And not to deny them, okay? It's kind of like I was beat, I was abused, I was made fun of, something. And now we can get into degrees of it, meaning, remember what I said when we started about how many scars you ended up with between 1 and 19. But, you know, but one of the things that happens is if that energy is sufficient, and let's say in PTSD, you can create physiological change in the body. Okay.
Oh yeah.
And that physiological change can occur through physical events, mental, emotional, spiritual, psychic. Here we go. Well, if they're all going on at the same time and they're high energy events, like you're in a firefight, then you're going to retain a quality of information behind that memory that far exceeds normal engagement. And not only that, if it's sufficiently intense enough, you will create what's called epigenetic change. And if you create epigenetic change, where you're actually altering the gene structure of the body, then you're also creating what can be passed on to a child and
Yeah.
passed on through generations. So now we know what generational impacts and transfer looks like. And like I said, this gets into the energy side. It all occurs in energy first, energy before matter. So,
Yeah, you know, some of the stuff you've been talking about, especially with the qigong and the martial arts about moving through the body, you know, obviously it's connected to the breath as well. The breath is probably a big part of your practices that you went through. But I've been reading, not reading, that was a lie. I've been listening to Dr. Joe's Dispenza's latest book, Becoming Supernatural, and it brings up a few thoughts of things that I've been hearing in the book that man, I just really didn't know about. One, like at the bottom of our spine, we have, you know, basically our tailbone uh, that flaps up and down with our breath, and our skull expands and uh, decompresses and compresses with each breath, and that's pushing fluid up and down your backbone, you know, your main chakra system. So it's just you know, interesting. I let me know if you can sympathize or get on board with this
yeah.
idea that
Okay.
if you look at the body more like a machine, life gets a little easier to understand.
Yes. And what you're talking about is something I've been exploring on my own and studying is pulse technology. So, pulse technology is really the future of all medicine, all healing modalities. It's not codified yet. I've been studying it the last couple of years really hard. And that is electromagnetic pulsing, which we'll call vibration, or we'll magnetic pulsing, light pulsing. All these things affect humans, and
Mm-hmm.
and it needs to be explored to which ones are benefit, which ones are detriment. It's like a pulsing fluorescent light can create seizures, and yet one that pulses faster may encourage healing in the body. So magnetics is way off the chart. That's all the concepts of med beds and stuff. But pulse technology is very simple. It's been prevalent all over the world. Native Americans do it when you walk the circle in we used to call it a stomp dance. You're hitting the heel on the ground and you're activating that Kundalini energy. And it pulses at the sacral all the way up to the spine and into the brain and back down. So, like in India, thousands of years, they know it as Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna. They give names to the energy flow and its presence. And so then you study Kundalini Yoga, the same thing happens. you're pulsing through rhythmic breathing and other techniques, and what you're doing is creating a constant flow of energy, where before maybe there was a lack of energy or an interruption or an interference. And so this applies to all levels of consciousness and all levels of existence. A tree pulses, okay? And if you can go into harmony with a tree, you can eliminate, in a Native American way, cancer and all kinds of things. And I've had
Yeah.
clients I've talked to about that. So when we talk about raising energy, it's like that pulse technology, that stomping on the ground with your heel, the spinning that the Sufis do, the Kundalini yoga, the weird practices we engage in, and ninjutsu and kung fu and a few others. All those are meant to increase the amount of energy. Why? The more energy you have, the healthier you are. The more active you are, the better you have. You have a better ability to influence the world or the universe to a greater degree than people that don't have that. So,
The pulse, I think that comes from our heart. That's another. So, real quick, that's another thing. Give shouts out to Joe Dispenza. God, if you're listening to this, or if this ever catches your ear, please come on my show. Good God, we got a lot to talk about. But he another thing he talks about in there, how the gestation for a baby, they actually they received the baby in gestation, they received their heart in the third week of gestation. The brain doesn't form and doesn't even come into existence until uh, like a month or two later, something like that. I don't know, but the point is the heart is the first thing formed. No, the heart is the first thing formed. The brain comes 3 weeks later or something like that. But the point is the heart is operating um, for days and weeks ahead of the brain ever coming into the picture in the gestation of the baby. So that was another thing that was stood out to me. The one of the things that I preach or talk about all the time. Like your universe starts at your heart center. When I never tell anyone, I try not to tell anyone happy birthday, or even you made another trip around the sun. Now I tell people that the sun made another trip around you.
right.
It made a whole another trip around you, because your universe starts here and it expands out. And I think that's what the pulse or auric field, what you're talking about, when our energy raises, our auric field raises, and our you know we become actually larger. Our energetic signature becomes larger than what it normally is, and that expands back and forth with our emotions. um you're talking about the ceremonies, the stomp dance and everything. One time I was in one of my pass out periods of pulling skulls, my second year of Sundance. Each gate you had to stop and you had to pray to the direction.
Right.
Well, at each for the first time around, and at each gate I passed out, and at each direction I got to meet like the spirits over that direction, and I got to ask whatever question I wanted. I remember I asked a question at the Eastern Gate. I said, "What is the magic behind the Sundance? What is the power?" And it broke it all the way down. It showed me the beat of the drum in unison, and it showed me everybody's heartbeat around there. After a couple of minutes, within 2 minutes, everyone's heartbeats beating at the same beat. Everybody's intentions, the same intention of world peace, world healing. Big healing. The Sundance is about, is a big prayer about healing for the collective and all a lot. And that that really hit me hard, man. Like when it really showed me that the power of the Sundance was our own heart, was each individual's heart
Yeah.
combined as one. That was the magic of the Sundance, and
Yes. That
that
ceremony,
was so powerful, man.
right.
So
The
powerful.
uh, number one, it says in the Bible, don't have anything to do with the supernatural. I'll just leave that right there. Um, anyway, I went to a 3-day ceremony with the Zunis. I got in there and was able to attend that. They don't let white people in there anymore too much. Um, I had a man ask me if I would take him to it because he knew he couldn't get in on his own. And I thought about it, and about a week later, I go, the ceremony's today, let's go. And he's like, what? And I was like, get in the car or don't go. And so that opening occurred. And when I walked into the ceremony at about midnight, the shaman there popped his eyes open, looked at me, and nodded. So I said, okay, we can stay, right? You have to ask permission. And what was occurring is like, first of all, that beat is still embedded in my brain. And I can tap it out. But you're achieving synchronization of the participants. And, you know, if you think about you're going to change the world, you may be able to do that if you have sufficient energy and intent, this, that, and the other. Intent being the least of it. But if you can synchronize a bunch of people, a group of people, with your intent, in this case, to bless all their land for the coming crops, is what we're doing, and the people and everything in it. And when the ceremony concluded, they had basically blessed about 250,000 square miles. Okay. So when you talk to people that say, oh, I can do this or I can do that, it's like, you haven't seen anything yet. You know,
Yeah.
if you can go and understand the amount of energy, or we'll call it power, to bless the land, the people, the plants, everything going on with it. And that's why I tell people like Arizona and New Mexico aren't in the same reality as the rest of the country, because they have been working on that reality and they have been influencing that reality to the benefit of all the people. And it's something that is definitely worthwhile. I think it's, again, like pulse technology, it's something that should be encouraged. And so the simple act of blessing the land to be productive or to be healthy, or yourself or your family, becomes something worthwhile that requires your full the full presence of yourself. Now, ceremony, meditation, all these things is to get you into the full presence of yourself, where you're you have an active ability to engage the reality. That's it. So
Beautifully said, man. Beautifully said. So so evolutionary shift of humanity, energetic is the key part of this whole story. Like, you know, it's accepted. One of the things that we talk about here at our church, and especially with ceremonies, like our mantra going in, like we talk about, you know, when the medicine's coming on or the ceremony's coming on, like trust and surrender, like trust and surrender to this process, trust and surrender to yourself, like, you know. And I work with a lot of veterans. You know, my like over half our clientele is usually veterans. So you're trying to tell a veteran to surrender, like, you know, automatically, you know, those are you're bouncing up against a lot of programming,
oh yeah,
intense programming that says surrender is not a part of, you know, the vocabulary or even in the wheelhouse that I'm even gonna accept. But the trust and surrender, I found, you know, that's another thing that came from spirit, or uh,
right,
you know, the ether, wherever you want to call it. That's one of the things that was told to me to tell people, you know, to help them, like.
right,
And a lot of it I learned through my own experience. When I finally surrendered, I was able to really travel. Like, I was really able to get outside of Drew and really go explore, like, what other aspects, you know, I'm about.
yes,
And I really amazed myself.
yes. I recommend a book, Dr. David Hawkins, called Letting Go. Is a 14th book he wrote. And it's a valid idea. I have given it to thousands of people. Power versus Force is the first book he wrote, and both of those books is to give you a better understanding. Remember with Gaia, I said if I can provide a better understanding or bigger understanding of what's going on, then you will benefit from that. And we do that. We can explore it through authors and other people, but ultimately we have to explore the universe through ourselves. Remember that going
Hmm.
closing your eyes and going backwards. It's not backwards; it's outwards in the other direction.
Yeah.
And the outward in the other direction is all energy and all information, and has no physicality to it per se. So once you go out of the physical world, which is again what happens in the lands in New Mexico and Arizona, it's like you're in a whole different direction. You're in a whole nother, not exactly realm, but definitely a different reality exists out there. And of course, that's what uh, Carlos Castaneda described in a Yaqui way of knowledge. And, he wrote those books in the 70s and 80s, and it's like that was all very new. And of course,
Mm.
the use of peyote and things to get there. Well, that was something that had been a technology, we'll call it, that existed for thousands of years.
Hmm.
It wasn't for general consumption. It's like not everybody is meant to be a shaman, right? Like we said earlier, a death experience is required to be a shaman. So, um, and if you survive that and come back, well, then you maybe have access to information you wouldn't have if you had never died. And
Mm.
even though I don't recommend dying, having done that several times, it does, like the old MASH song, it brings on many changes.
Yeah.
So
You
if you,
know,
you can survive the experience, you will be more knowledgeable, right? You'll have
you
a
know,
understanding of the universe, right? So
people ask me, they said, what's the biggest thing you found from your near death? Like I've had a few. The most deep one was probably the one in the Sundance. Like I said, the biggest thing that I got from my near death was I was very confused for the first, like, probably 2 minutes of it, or maybe 60 seconds, 2 minutes, whatever. I was very confused. Because I heard people talking around me until I heard someone say that uh, he has no pulse, so he's not breathing. And when they started those conversations, that's when I tried to open my eyes. It didn't work. I set up, and that's when it all hit me, like, and the feelings of peace, flood over you, and everything that you've ever worried about just stops, and you go into this field, but yeah, that was the biggest thing. It's confusing. Is Dying is confusing
yeah,
because
the reason
everything you've been taught is not the way it goes.
that is exactly true, and that's why I laugh at it because all those things they told me that wasn't
None of that happens.
what I went through, you know.
None of that happens.
Yeah, it's it's amazing where consciousness comes through with what I call revelatory truth. Like Britney Spears, do it to me one more time after you've died. You wake up and go, okay, let's do this again and see what happens, right?
then
Yeah,
you finally then you finally realize this is all you're gonna do.
yeah,
Like, this is all you're ever gonna do. Like,
right.
you're just gonna
Yeah,
keep doing it.
yeah. It's like, yeah, let's go again. That was fun, and
Yeah.
it's not gallows humor. It's what I call a proper perspective that you approach death with. And
So here's a personal question before we get off this subject. Not personal, but like, this is coming just from me. Like, this
yeah,
curiosity. Do you think we're gonna forget again?
we're gonna what?
Do you think do you think that, like, I'm gonna forget again? Like, do you think forgetting is an integral part of the process? Like
Oh,
if I like the next go around,
yeah.
like
It's
you know what I'm talking about. Do we
yeah,
forget?
okay. One of the things that the human being hates is a discontinuity. Okay. And a discontinuity, like let's say you passed out, like you've been drinking or drugging, you passed out. You are out of time and out of sync with reality, we'll call it. And you can't ever recover it. Remember, it's blanked out. Okay. You're blanked out. Well, what that means is you were somewhere else while the rest of the world was going on. So, okay, I can accept that. Now, if that's true, then when I'm not here, I'm obviously someplace else, and that's absolutely true. Okay, so you can approach that in whichever way you want to, through religion, philosophy, science. I don't care. But one of the things that happens is that number one, you were someplace else before you were here. And that's an absolute truth also, because one of the things I discovered is the idea of a portal. When my wife got pregnant, there was a little black dot that appeared up in the corner of the room. And I'm looking at that, trying to figure out what the heck is that, right? And I turned to my wife and I said, "You're pregnant," right? Now, that portal is an opening for the consciousness, the identity to come forth. Because you have a identity, you have a personality, we'll call it, before you're born. And in Zen, there's a koan about what was the face you had before you were born. Well, the sheer impact of that statement is you had a face before you were born. You had a consciousness, you had an identity. And nobody really approaches it or talks about it to a degree we can understand that you came here. You came here through a portal. Why is it a little black dot the size of a silver dollar? I don't know. I'm still exploring that after 30 or 40 years. But
Yeah.
the idea is that you arrived into a place of formation. That's the easiest way. And so now we can get into the whole thing about your form was set at that moment. Your height, your weight, your sex, hair color, all of it was contained as it came through that opening. In other words, it wasn't present here. You brought it with you. And of course, that's why I say, it's a popcorn year. You arrived here, so enjoy the dang thing, right? But if you
So
look at that, nobody's really ever explored that. They say, well, if it's a portal between where and where, or here and there, and then what was the state of your existence? This is the same kind of questions that come up with memory, right? Like, where's memory? How do you access it? What's the method of transfer? What's the method of communication? How much energy is required? What's the method of storage? And why do some memories get stored and others get thrown away? And, you can ask a million different questions, but I'm telling you, you were you to some degree before you got here. You came through an opening carrying all the information that's present. All your genetic expression occurred and completed itself at 18 or 19 years old. And at that point, 18 or 19, you are you and you are here and whatever the rest that John Lennon sang about.
so I'm gonna field a couple questions from the chat room. This is gonna be an interesting answer. I know. Is reality real?
No, it's local. One, I get off to writing books sometimes, and one of them I've been working on for several years, kind of like things I study, is the idea of proximate reality. So you are a reality event, a reality field that is interacted to some degree with others, other realities, other reality fields. And those reality fields can take the form of form. It can be a person, a place, or a thing. Those are the three primary. So you have a reality of yourself, you have a reality of the place you're in, and you have a reality of the things around you. And that reality for average person doesn't extend beyond 9 feet, just so you know. And so if I'm sitting here and I think about where you are, I'm not there. Your reality doesn't exist for me. Okay. I have no conscious interaction with all my senses of the temperature and the air feel, and it just goes forever. It's non-existent. We just like to assume that the reality we're in extends into every other place on the universe, and it's not true. It doesn't mean we can't interact with it. So all you have is local reality unless you do things to encourage your or develop your ability to expand out into other realities.
So let's take this a step further.
Okay.
So the room that you're in is real for you. It's semi-real for me.
Right.
The room I'm in is real for me, but it's semi-real for you. It's even less for other people, you know.
Right. Because it's the only.
What? Hold on. This is the question. The space that's in between, you're in New Mexico or whatever, or Arizona, I'm assuming, and I'm in Colorado. Is the space in between me and you, is that even projected right now?
No,
Like
that space.
I guess this goes to the question: if the bear shits in the woods, does anybody see it?
No, the space between you and me doesn't exist. Okay. There's no there's no such thing as distance, because one of the things in energy medicine is I work on people all over the planet, and the way I do that is that the distance between me and you doesn't exist. I throw it out the window. So I have presence not just in my local reality, I can extend my presence into somebody else's local reality. And we do that minimally with our thoughts. Oh, I was thinking of you, right? That's a presence of somebody else's reality. So we're quite facile, we're quite flexible, we're quite mobile in how we do all that. But the reality is you have a local reality that extends into your senses, period. And then to go beyond that requires you to go into what would be called some sort of state of mind or state of soul, or here we go with all the metaphysical stuff that's occurred over the years. And that's what they're trying to describe. So, for instance, right now, let's say I'm in my home and I have a bedroom. That reality doesn't exist. It exists only as some sort of memory or some sort of connection that allows me to move between here and there. Well, I could have the same level of connection between you and me, and I could be sitting next to you. And Vedic literature and some books written in Tibet and stuff, they have the idea of what we call translocation or bilocation. And so we know that that's possible. And occasionally I might have done that, right? And as a sense of something that happened, okay? So the truth of the matter is you have a local reality. Out to 9 feet is good. 3 feet is average. Most people, it's much less. And some of the exercise I teach and some of the things we learned in martial arts, secret martial arts, was to expand your ability to be present and interact in any other place. And I've done that just for entertainment to some military people and stuff occasionally, just for fun. So this is a true projection of the self and the true existence of you through all realities and all time and all space. But it's something that you might want to work at. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Let's see. I got another question. It says, oh, this is a great question. So, how do you get yourself into full presence or full alignment?
I've given that answer before. Um, I found something that works. I studied the martial arts of the Philippines, PK Slot, Kali, knife fighting. Okay. And you know, when you're going for belt and stuff, you're given a hunting knife, and your partner's given a hunting knife, and uh, and and
Okay.
and this is the test, like you test for belt, right? And I guarantee you, if somebody has a 6 or 8 inch hunting knife standing opposite you, and you know, Grandmaster Tuan Gahi goes go, the world disappears. Right? There is no reality. There is only presence. Okay, you
Yeah.
totally. It's a state of mind. Normally, only reached through drugs and psychedelics and things like that. But in this case, it's not devoid of the body, right? So a lot of psychedelic experiences are obviate the body as a participant. And
Mhm.
and knife fighting, I guarantee you, you're not worried about paying your bills or who you're related to or what your name is. So
Yeah.
remember how
Yeah. Yeah.
reality coalesces
Here,
or collapses into the moment. So people talk about being in the moment. Oh yeah. You know, I don't recommend knife fighting to anybody, by the way. It's just something I picked up at a young age and decided to explore, become talented at it after 3 or 4 years, right? But
yeah.
it's
Well, you
totally,
have to be. You're still
yeah,
here. Like, so
yeah.
you have to be.
So so to be present is as a consciousness, as what I call a data point, right? Remember that little portal?
Yeah.
If you shrink all the way down to that size, now you have ultimate presence of the self, independent of the body, the mind, the brain, all these other things. But you are present in the universe, not just in your little 3 foot or 9 foot reality. And so there's a lot to talk about and learn through that little exercises and things that we were just talking about. So
Being in the present.
yeah, you can practice it, but if
Yeah.
it requires you to engage, and and engaging means disengaging all thinking. And
Yeah.
I teach some meditations to stop the thinking because one of the things we talk about is thinking won't give it. That's the language. No matter how much thinking you do, it's not going to do anything.
Hmm.
So
I
if you
like
can get
that.
rid of your thinking, which is what the purpose of all meditation is, then when you stop thinking, you quit. You've reached the end of the meditation.
Well, the thinking really, if you really if you really think about it, the thinking only happens in the past or the future. It doesn't happen in the present. Like
Right.
this some I talk about it. I break it down a little different way, saying that we have manifestation energy, and each breath we have that, we can decide where that manifestation energy goes. If we're thinking about past events or future events, it's going into something that's in the past literally and can't be changed or fixed, or it's going into something that there's too many variables to really even put too much of it in there. But if you if you concentrate on the bricks that are in front of your feet and the pathway that's in front of your feet, you can make a really smooth pathway in the present moment. Like, that's how I talk about it. But
Yeah, we're not capable of experiencing the present, just so you know.
not a
It's
100%, not a
no,
100%.
it's just
There's
at the
by
same,
design,
yeah. The
by
the,
design
the
we can't.
yeah, the dichotomy is it's the only thing we can experience. And so that gets into fun Zen meditation type things, right? One of the things about all this manifesting, though, I laugh. I did a little thing in Central Park where I did the 7 things that all these people that promote that and hold, seminars, and you can manifest anything. The first one is it available? Okay. And not only that, is it available for you? So those are two different things. One's a person, one's a place. So, for instance, if I want to go outside and pick an orange, it's not available to me no matter how much I might work to manifest that. Or I can pick myself up and move to Florida or California or Valencia, Spain, and walk out the door and pick an orange. Now, that is manifesting when you put actions into what the idea is, right?
Yeah.
But just to have the idea is insufficient. It's the same thing as thinking won't give it. Manifesting will
Yeah.
not occur through simple thought. Okay,
No.
there has to be an action that goes along with it. Um,
I I agree, man. I totally agree. I I speak about that too, and I put it when the physical meets the quantum at a balance. That's when
right,
manifestation happens, and it's the balance is the key part. People don't really get that. They think they can have a little bit of effort and a lot of bit of prayer. They once you balance the two and align your heart, you know that trifecta, that sacred trifecta of existence. Like I think that's the key, and that's from my personal experience. Like I've
yeah,
been. That's one of the manifesting. That's one of the last things that you really start to get privy to. The hard lessons and all that. Those are the beginning parts. The manifestation, like everyone wants to do it because they want to make things or do things, but you got to understand, like the universe is not going to let you do something until
right.
you're capable of handling that.
Yeah, I teach it as timing under heaven. It's
Timing under heaven.
yeah, it's called moment. When I teach martial arts, I teach awareness, uh, which is presence, and then it goes to balance. You have to balance the self and balance yourself with the universe, and then you go to moment, timing under heaven, and that is true knowingness. And once you start engaging in true knowingness with the universe and with yourself, then that is where we get what's called magical expansion. Okay.
Mm, I like it.
So it's like human evolution. I don't know about that. I would call it human expansion because we're definitely adding to the database.
Yeah.
Phenomenal, so more than in the past. And another reason to grab the popcorn because it's moving so fast that it's hard to pick a target of where we're going to land with all this. So,
Man, I don't think anyone. I think if anyone raised their hand and say they know exactly how it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and everything, like those are even myself. I give advice. I talk through things, but ultimately, it's just my ideas. I'm just talking about them. If they vibe with you, that's cool. But uh, I think part of the spiritual growth, like one of the things I talk about a lot, like I've met 1,000 Jesuses. Like this. There's a lot of people that come out of ayahuasca ceremony and say I'm Jesus reincarnated. I'm like, yeah, if there was a such thing as a linear timeline, that might be possible, but you're
right.
tapping into a consciousness field of information that is particular for your life in this moment. You know,
That's
I've
true.
uh
That's very
I've
true.
I've experienced Osiris. I know there's Osiris was my first channeling. That happened by total accident. It was an hour and a half channeling. Never heard of the man before in my life, or the being before in my life. Before that point, and a, a lot of information was just it was crazy. My wife started recording it shortly after it started, and the information that come out was verified and by me over months, and it really made my hair stand up. And then I experienced Jesus. I was on the cross, and I was also I experienced one of the soldiers, two separate instances. But
Yeah,
I got to understand why that being was treated that way, and why he was crucified the way he was. And it really hit me about the meridian points in the hands, feet, energy, The way he was crucified really spoke to me. And going through that experience um, from both sides, I got to really
Yeah.
go deep into that.
Yes, all information is available. Remember when I
Mm,
talked about I've been GPS and kind of like the field, and
mm,
when you engage with an information set, and this gets into my proximity theory and information set and set theory. There's about 5 of those in there. Um, when you tap into that, you can experience all the information, have it all available of whatever locale, whether you take it as a name or a place. This is the same thing in remote viewing. Uh, when you are engaged with that, you are in that moment or in that field, and all that information is available to you there, right? And
mm,
when you come out of it, you come back to being yourself. So, so people just say I'm the reincarnation of Edgar Casey or something. It's not true. You're not a reincarnation. You may have the knowledge that comes from that information set that exists. All of this information sets of everybody that's ever lived exists. Every time period, every place in history. And if
mm.
you can go, remember when you're daydreaming? If you're in a daydreaming state, you have freed the conscious to float around in the field. And the same thing could be true under certain medications or certain places on the planet where it actually can kick you over. Those are more portals and stuff that can kick you into that field to the extent that it is a reality. Okay. So while you have a reality, if you extend a few feet, there's a whole bunch of them you can jump in and out of. And
Yeah.
and not only that, you can acquire knowledge, you can acquire information. Uh, Tesla came out of one of them and in one day drew out all the turbines at Niagara Falls. Einstein said an equation came to him. So we learn more that way and learn more about the deep knowledge of the universe than we ever did sitting in a classroom. Right? So, my opinion.
Yeah. No, I totally agree, man. So we're winding down here. Before we start closing it down, definitely want to get you locked down. You're always welcome back here, man. Continuous conversation. I love it. I love the vibe. Really laid back and everything. So anytime you want to come back, definitely welcome you back here to Eagles Nest Podcast. What is what is your message? Like what if Randy has one thing for the people, like what is it?
Oh, what Bob Marley say? Don't worry, be happy.
Don't worry, be happy, love
Yeah.
it.
Um, Life is fun. Okay. That is, and if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. That's one of the ways I look at things. And not only that is if everybody encounters the opposite, we'll call it. And the trick is to rebound,
Yeah.
right? Is to rebound into the idea that life is exciting, life is fun. It's definitely exciting. Um, it may not be truthful, but it's definitely exciting. and and so when I say fun, David Hawkins wrote in his book, Power versus Force, the idea of consciousness, and that's something we could talk about sometime. But 540 is a level of joy. It's actually a level of consciousness above love. And
Mm.
if you can exist in a state of joyfulness, you will have a tremendous impact on your own well-being and the well-being of everyone around you. And so you can explore that idea. A joyful person is a benefit to everybody and everything, plants,
Wow.
animals, you name it. And
I like that.
so that's the idea, to maintain a joyful existence. So,
I love it. Joy, gratitude, man. They're very high on the vibrational scale, you know.
right.
And so what's next? What's next for you, brother? Like what you got? What you got in the loop? How many books you got out, by the way? We haven't even talked about that. Like,
The,
list them off. This is the time.
the, the problem is they're written but not published. I
Oh, okay.
problem trying to figure out how to get them published.
I
Uh,
gotcha.
War Day is one that has been written. It's not available. I've been talking about it 5 years. Um, and it's the idea that we would start the day in a way that is gives us the maximum potential to experience life that day. And I've given it to lots of people that are clients as a way to engage the world. Like nobody taught you uh, how to get up, how to do things that will enable you to engage with the universe no matter what it throws at you, and then to recover from that. And that's the other thing that people don't do. They don't recover well from what happened today. All right, we don't place today in its proper place, which is yesterday. Okay.
Mm.
Uh, the theory of approximate reality is one that I don't know. I'm up several hundred pages on that one, but I doubt anybody would read it.
You never
the
know, man. You got to put it out there.
Yeah, because it's just so foreign to what we've been taught. Like tonight, we talk about having a local reality. Well, boy, that gets into a big discussion about how many realities are there? How do you engage with them? Are you a reality transurfer or a reality surfer? And what abilities and knowledge comes from that? I mean, it goes on in crazy ways.
Yeah.
Set theory is again, your information set has brackets or it's open. So,
Mhm.
and there's lots of those. And I've been writing that for my own benefit, just to gain some kind of coherence about how all this stuff works. Like everything we've talked about, it all works, but
Mhm.
to have a unified field theory of all of it, right?
Uh,
And the thing I have a problem with physics, they have a unified field theory that I've been searching for, and they have the four forces of the universe, nuclear, whatever. They leave consciousness out, right? Because without consciousness, without you and me, this doesn't exist, right?
none of it. None of it.
Yeah, it doesn't exist in any form of interaction. So
I got a question I forgot to ask. I ask every single guest this question. Why is Egypt such a pivot point in this ascension path?
it's in my approximate reality thing, I talk about information density. Okay, it's kind of like all the people that say they've been to other worlds and other universes in a physical form. It's like, well, maybe not. And they can say those things, but there's no information density to support it. Okay, so anybody that relates stories to about something they've done or someplace they've been, the information density is phenomenal. It's kind of like I've been to the San Juan Basin. And it was cold, and I remember it was autumn, and the color of the trees, and the pavement, and then there wasn't nobody out, and there was only 6 cars on the road. I mean, I can go on forever about just driving through the San Juan Basin north of you. So if I said I went to Jupiter, I went to Mars, and I was on a Mars base there. There's no information density that'll support that. Okay, at least in anybody I've met so far, no matter what they claim.
Yeah.
So information density becomes really important, and then there's energetic density. Remember how we get PTSD? That's an energy density that is detrimental to your health and well-being, right? So did that answer?
Maybe that Egypt is
Oh, okay.
there's a large energy center
Okay.
there.
So yeah, the reason I said all that is because Egypt has an information density that extends through time to a greater degree than a whole lot or most other places on the
I
planet.
gotcha.
Okay.
So it's an energetic hotspot.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. And and it gets in the concept of people go, well, this is a sacred place. Well, any square foot you're standing on, you're alive, is a sacred place as far as I'm concerned, because
Yeah.
what you're doing is giving meaning to one place, and that means you're giving energy to it, and then that place assumes an energy density greater than the surrounding places. Remember
Mhm.
proximity. And so, but Egypt has an information density that is exceeds a whole lot of other places in the world, right? And we are drawn to that because we want to know, gnosis. We want to know about ourselves. We want to know about everything. And
So
so,
it's kind of ascension portal in a way.
well, ascension becomes a whole nother conversation we could have because it exists, but it does have an expansionary effect in that you become more inclusive of, let's say, the history of the place or of yourself, and you become more knowledgeable about the potential of the future and your future self.
Hmm. Very well said, man. So what's conferences coming up for Randy? You got anything scheduled or?
No, occasionally people mess up and invite me to those things, but I tend to be pretty contrary to, remember, if the information density or energy density is wrong, I don't mind calling people out on it.
Yeah.
And they get pretty excited because they're pretty welded to whatever story they've created,
Yeah.
uh, as opposed to whatever reality they've experienced. Um, I haven't been invited to many. Excuse me. Uh, excuse me. Just a second. Because I do tend to be argumentative about some of these subjects, right? Particularly ascension and consciousness and reality, just to name a few. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
No,
I'm
I have.
available that anybody wants to throw somebody on one of those panels and see what happens. So,
Yeah. I was. I'm just thinking. The Star Knowledge Conference. That's definitely something that you would vibe with for sure.
yeah,
Uh, yeah.
yeah.
I was just there in November with Laura Eisenhower, and yeah, it's Chief Golden Light Eagle, or did you ever get a chance to meet him?
Who?
Chief Golden Light Eagle.
No, I have not.
He was the founder and of the Star Knowledge 1111 conference, and for like 26 years, he passed away recently. But yeah, but that's
Yeah,
definitely a conference. I understand what you're saying. I don't get invited to a lot of conferences. I don't have stories of
right,
secret space programs or
right.
like stuff like that. I don't have a really interesting story. Like my story is the same story that you've heard
Right.
for since the beginning of millennia, and it's
Now, the ones that I used to love is there was a science and consciousness conference that used to be put on 20 years ago. And I went to many of those and got invited to speak at a couple of them finally. But they ended up disappearing before I got to kind of be on stage there.
yeah.
But what I loved about it is that everybody from Rupert Sheldrake, Bill Tiller, Russell Targ, all these people would come there, and I would get to, let's say, be interactive with them.
Yeah.
and and out of that, like Dr. Tiller invited me to join his research team, or Russell Targ and I talked about, maybe the idea of a book that would explain something besides a mechanical or academic approach to remote viewing. I mean, there was a lot that came out of it. And my
Yeah.
favorite is the Russians that would come. Uh, Dr. Savely Seva, not his real name, Dr. Korotkov. Uh, these people were miles and years in advance and where we are, and yet now we're talking about things that we talked about 20, 25 years ago. So
Yeah.
so
That's cool, man. Well, I honor you. I appreciate you, man. It's good getting to know you better on here, having this conversation. And yeah, you're invited back anytime. Just let me know, and we'll get you in. So I appreciate it, and I know my listeners are excited. And yeah, I appreciate you, man.
Well, this is great fun. I love being
Yeah,
able to have an open conversation without
yeah,
people, taking too much offense. Um,
yeah.
it's like the whole thing of being human or human evolution. Those are long topics. They would require a conversation. So,
Long, long topics, man, and and you never really get, uh, like we were talking about before. You can't really understand it unless the experience. We can sit here, we can talk until we're blue in the face. We could
yeah,
sit here for another 4 hours,
right.
and you can help people get to the door, but ultimately you have to walk through that door yourself. So,
Yep, that's why I tell everybody: be an explorer. Be, be an explorer of your own consciousness, and through that, the world. Right, the universe.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. I've had a great time.
Thank you, man. Anytime. Oh, good conversation. I always like getting deep with people that are not afraid to go deep, and get into questions that they might not even talked about before. So yeah, it's I knew that was going to be a good conversation. I knew it, and yeah, I can't wait to have him back on. Shout out to Randy. Many blessings to you and your family, your whole circle on out, man. All the blessings, man, to you. Appreciate you. Let's see what I got coming up. Ruben Langdon on Thursday. Um, yeah, I might have a surprise guest show up on Friday. If not, I'll be back in a week or two. I got my oldest daughter coming out to visit, and yeah, it's exciting, and gonna be spending some time with her. So you know, I'm trying to live by example and just be that balance. Uh, got the ceremonies, I got my work, I got my family, and I try to give that all balance and also honor myself inside. And I invite you all to do that. If anything else, honor yourself. The Your universe starts at your heart. Work on your heart and start that outwards and see what happens. So that's my advice to you. And connect to your breath, and know that you're loved, and you're ultimately part of this one consciousness. The separation is illusion. Much love.